substitute for Senate Bill 555, providing for a 3-cent tax increase on sale of fuel when cost is less than $2 per gallon. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senators Plymel, Kessler, Stallings, and Williams move to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause and inserting in lieu thereof the following.
Senator from Wayne.
Request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of have read.
Senator from Wayne requests unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Senator from Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, what this amendment does, it keeps intact everything that was passed by Senate Finance on Senate Bill 555, which raises about $33 million for our roads. And as many of you members know, this is probably one of our major issues that when we were coming down to this body to try to fix. What this amendment does, it takes many of the provisions of Senate Bill 478 of last year and 610 this year, and it adds it into this through this amendment. And the first thing that it does, if you look at the Blue Ribbon Commission, the Blue Ribbon Commission made about 5 elements of major things that we needed to be doing. One was the privilege tax, and they wanted to raise it to 5 to 6. The bonds for the turnpike, which are not in here, which would have raised about $1.5 billion. This was modeled after Ohio. This is not in this bill. The DMV fees, and let's take a little second to talk about the DMV fees. This body in 2011 passed a bill. The senior senator from the 4th, Senator from Putnam, Senator from Monongalia, and the senators from Taylor and myself and others were sponsors of that bill. It passed the passed the Senate and passed the House, but was vetoed by the governor. One of his issues was an interstate commerce clause that related to insurance. That no longer is relevant to the DMV's section. The other one's an alternative fuel. That was one of their recommendations. That is not in this bill. And the other was the current consumer sales tax on cars, parts, and repairs. And since that is really one of those that takes, and I think one of my colleagues mentioned it as robbing Peter to pay Paul, it takes out of one area and actually puts it in another. That is not in this bill and not in this amendment. And the other is a 0.5% that was in Senate Bill 610 in order to get the funding that we need, and also to make it, when you're working with companies that have to try to put a 0.5% on something, it goes up to actually 1%, which will be $200 million. Now, I will submit to you that these sometimes it takes hard choices here, and it sometimes takes tough times for us to finally get to where we need. We have to do something for our roads. I'll also tell you that as you look at this, we had looked at the privilege tax. Instead of taking the privilege tax and raising it like the Blue Ribbon Commission, we're actually moving it down to 4%, but making it apply to new cars. What these measures do related to DMV fees and others, that means that 9 cents a day is what a person will pay more. Now, I've had enough complaints from the constituents that the senator from Cabell and I represent in Wayne, in Cabell County, on the roads. And I'll hate to say to you, every time you try to dodge a pothole and you miss it, I don't think good things come out of your mouth. And I know that what happens is when we have to pay for those and they have to come back, and we know what's been happening. The senator from Putnam knows exactly how much more money are we paying when we have to come back and pay for people that have hit potholes, that have hurt that damaged their cars. And I think this is a small price for people to pay when we're talking about moving our economy along. I also will tell you that the Congress, and I really want to mention 4 people in particular from Congress that have really taken this issue on: Senator Capito and Senator Manchin, Congressman Jenkins and Congressman McKinley. In particular, as we look at the FAST Act, that's Fixing American Surface Transportation, they finally passed a bill in Congress that actually addresses this on a long-term basis. So they passed a 5-year bill. Now, there are complaints that there's only funding for 3, but I'll tell you one thing, that's far better than the Congresses have done in the past. They've just been doing 1-year fixes for many, many years. And I know that in Congressman Jenkins' case, that he just announced that he thinks he's going to be able to get additional funding for the state of West Virginia in the billions. Now, this raises what they did in the FAST Act, $6 million. We're going to get $6 million more per year in this state. Well, you know what the needs are. I think this is one of the most crucial and critical votes we will take in the time that I have been here in the Senate, and I urge the adoption of the amendment.
Is there discussion? The junior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. I'm grateful for it. I wish I could stand here and rise to support a roads bill that was paid for by revenue already generated. Unfortunately, I can't do that. We all know the condition of our highways. We hear it every day from our constituents. This bill, as amended, would be more, though, than just a highway bill. It's also a jobs bill. I brought this little thing with me. It is more than just a roads bill. We know how important it is to fix our roads, but we also know that we need jobs. I was reading Hoppy Kercheval's commentary today, and he noted that Moody's Analytics has just declared West Virginia to be in recession. He goes on to say that the U.S. Department of Labor reported that 11,800 West Virginians lost their job last year. So it's important for us to fix our roads. It's equally important for us to try to create some jobs. And we've been doing that today. I've been hearing some of you talk about this bill and that bill will create some jobs. ARTBA says that this bill would create nearly 4,000 jobs. And when you think about it, we lead the nation. West Virginia continues to lead the nation in the largest percentage of decline of construction employment. Over the last 18 months, nearly 5,000 West Virginians, nearly 5,000 less West Virginians were working on December the 1st, 2015 versus December the 1st, 2014. Senate Bill 555, if amended, would put thousands of people back to work immediately, not just in construction, but there would be a ripple effect in other industries. It will also improve our gross domestic product. It will also provide tax revenue to our tax department, and it will keep our roads and bridges safe. All of you have seen the ad. I think that West Virginia has gone from 14th in the nation to 8th in the nation for having the worst bridges in the country. That's happened in just 2 short years. I saw an article yesterday or day before from a Wheeling newspaper that said the West Virginia Department of Highways is starting to put load limits on our bridges. I mean, we just can't have that. If that becomes pervasive and we see that across our state, think about what an impact that'll have if they reduce the load limits. Already happening in Wheeling, I'm told, at least on one bridge. We hear from time to time that West Virginia is last in the nation in one category or another, and one thing is for certain, we are last. We are the last state east of the Mississippi River to address our highways in any sort of major way. We're the only state east of the Mississippi River, Mr. President, that hasn't done something significant. Pennsylvania has passed a $2 billion road program, Virginia a $1 billion road program, Ohio $1.5 billion. And I think they've just see that we can't rely forever on the federal government to take care of our highways. We have a huge need. And as the senator from Wayne said, Congress has finally passed a multi-year long-term highway bill, but it only adds $6 million a year in federal funds. And that's really not much when we have $16 billion worth of highway projects that are stalled. Many of them are already designed, and we don't have the money to build them. So I believe it's our time to act. Let's fill in that map and no longer be the only state east of the Mississippi River to do nothing significant for our highways. And as the senator said, we can really do it in these fees for pennies a day. They'll cost the average West Virginian 9 cents a day. And we're spending 90 cents a day, by some estimates, repairing our cars and replacing flat tires. It's costing us millions of dollars doing nothing. So let's spend those pennies and let's save millions. I think that this bill is a bold, bipartisan message. It's an opportunity for us to send a wonderful message to not only the people of West Virginia, but to our colleagues at the other end of this hallway. We can't control what they do, but we can control what we do. We can't control what the governor will do. And I would urge you not to get too caught up in the specifics of this bill, because it probably will get a haircut somewhere else. But it will be a message to our constituents and to our colleagues down the hall that we are serious about West Virginia roads. I urge passage of this gentleman's amendment, and frankly, sir, I believe it would be a dereliction of our duties if we leave here without addressing our roads and bridges. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Monongalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I too rise in support of this amendment. I appreciate the efforts of the gentleman from Wayne and appreciate the kind comments from the senator from Kanawha. It's very appropriate. You know, folks, in 2011, we passed a piece of legislation that would have increased DMV fees, would have raised approximately between $40 and $60 million. And it took courage of everyone in this room, and it took courage of the House. And as we know in the House, they can be a little bit jittery on issues of taxes. But they stepped up and they did the right thing. Unfortunately, the governor did veto the message. So again, I'm glad that that portion's in this bill. But you know, had that not been vetoed, we would have raised to date close to $300 million. That would have gone a long way over the last few years to take care of some of the infrastructure problems we have here in the state of West Virginia. But you know, I'm very happy because you know, you get two questions every day from the folks back home. What are you going to do about jobs? And what are you going to do about our roads? Well, this bill does, in fact, as the gentleman said, address both those issues very clearly. It does increase jobs and it does take care of our roads. But I think something else that's more important, because we hear it come up from time to time, is why aren't you guys working together? And I think this bill does, in fact, show that we can, in fact, work together to do something good for the people of West Virginia. And as it's been said time and time again, roads are the question that comes up back home, jobs are the questions that comes up back home, and we're addressing it here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too rise in support of the amendment offered by my colleague from Wayne. You know, and I do commend the senator from Putnam for putting on the agenda, you know, a bill to talk about transportation issues, and the bill that was going to raise, as the bill is before us, 3 cents on a gallon of gas during periods when gas is under $2, which, frankly, that's a good initiative, something I've been supportive of. But the bottom line is, if we look at Senate Bill 555, you know, it really just nibbles around the edges. You know, I've heard testimony that because of our because of the current low price of gasoline, particularly over the last couple of years. Not when it's $3.50 a gallon or $3.25 a gallon or $2.90 a gallon, but when it's down in $1.40, $1.50, $1.60. Our gas tax is fixed in large part by the average wholesale cost on October 31st of each year, and because of the declining price of gas, the amount of revenue that we're creating to fix our roads has actually been decreasing. So, and while this bill may raise, as introduced, 555 or before us may raise $30 million approximately, $33 million. The fact of the matter is, over the last couple years, just because the declining price of gasoline is fixed to the wholesale price index, we are actually losing $40 million. So this bill doesn't even fill in the hole that we have in highway funding. So the bill is, with the amendment, actually does something. Not only fills the hole, it moves forward. We know what the Blue Ribbon Commission says. We need $1 billion or more to fix our roads. And we don't have the money to do it. They've said we need, $800 million or $600 million or $400 million a year just to maintain them. Just to maintain them. And that isn't enough what we're going to be raising with this bill. It won't even keep us even, let alone we'll fall further behind. That Blue Ribbon Commission was adopted back in 2000, and I think the senator from Wayne and Monongalia and yourself, the senator from Putnam, served on that as my representative at the time, and you studied back in 2013 what we needed to do. What we needed to do. And guess what? The first part of the step was to inventory all the roads and assess all the needs. And that was done pretty quickly and easy. The second part, how to fund it, how to pay for it. That was the hard part. And after months of deliberations and consideration of various funding sources, working with industry, working with contractors, working with folks in the gasoline business, working with legislators, working with the governor's office, they came out with a blue ribbon plan to suggest certain things. But yet, 2 years have passed, and we haven't done a darn thing to implement them, while our roads continue to deteriorate around us and crumble. Myself, I know I've replaced this year 1 tire rim and about 6 tires over the last year of my family. Probably over $1,000. I guarantee you, well over that. And that doesn't even count the alignments. I think everybody in our state knows that our roads are in tremendous disarray. They're not going to get fixed. As I've said before, on wishes and spit. They need asphalt. They need concrete. They need workers. They need rebar. They need to be fixed, Mr. President. This bill goes a long way to do that. It will create jobs and it will create opportunities. We've been cutting, trying to balance the budget, but we're neglecting our people and we're neglecting particularly our infrastructure, which is our roads. I'm a Keynesian economist. I believe when you invest money and government invests money, that due to the multiplier effects, it works. And it will create jobs. It will create opportunity in the construction business. Those folks that are working in the construction trades will work. They'll buy materials in our homes, our communities, and in our businesses that support those industries. And we'll all be better off. I suspect if this thing raises $200 or $300 million with a multiplier effect, it'll create $1 billion worth of economic activity over the next 16 months. And if it is true, unfortunately, that there is a recession, guess what, Mr. President? We may be able to minimize or eliminate that by putting $1 billion or more worth of investment in the state of West Virginia. That's how we dig ourselves out of a hole. Not by cutting, but by investing. And that is a time, as I've heard it said many times, my friend the senator from Jackson, it's time to be bold. It is time to be bold, Mr. President. I say it's time to go big or go home. The people sent us down here saying roads are one of the #1 issues in this state. #1 issues in this state. And if we go home not doing anything but passing a bill that doesn't even get us back to where the status, not even filling the hole that we're in, then shame on us, Mr. President. This is something we can do and show in a bipartisan manner that we truly are listening to the people, and we're going to fix this thing, and we're going to fix our roads starting today, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator from Braxton.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, we've heard some good remarks from both sides of the aisles this morning about the economics and the jobs and all, but I want us to stop and pause for just a minute and think about something else. Every one of us in here represents areas that are rural. Think about your kids coming home from a ball game. Think about your wife or your mother going to the store. It's foggy or it's snowing. You know, our roads are winded and crooked and up and down anyway. What we're talking about here is maybe saving someone's life. How do you put a price on that? Especially if it's one of your family members or our family members or neighbors. Look, some things we should be fussing about. That's what makes for good government, Mr. President. You have an opinion here, an opinion there, and we try to meet together in the middle for good government. This is not a bipartisan, this is a bipartisan issue right here. Every one of us in here are concerned about the folks that we represent back home. And for this small amount of money, we might save someone's life. We might save a school bus from going over the hill or something. How do you put a dollar value to that? So let's all do the right thing. We know it's the right thing to do. Let's be courageous here. Think about the folks back home that we're down here representing. And let's pass this so that we can have better roads. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm rising in support, but I also want to say technically the bill on, and we've heard about 3 cents gas increase, that's not necessarily true. That might be true when gas prices are very low, and they are low, and we're all enjoying them. But it just adjusts the floor by 20 cents on when the gas prices are reduced. As gas prices go back up, and we inevitably know that we're all enjoying low gas prices right now. The way the part of the gas taxes are implemented, part of it's on a percentage of wholesale price and the other is a set amount. So this is not necessarily, and actually it's only a 3 cent increase if gas is selling for very cheap. But, Mr. President, I wanted to draw your attention to another bill that we passed, this body, and it passed unanimously. It was Senate Bill 258, that's unfair trade practices. And I believe that bill saved, and I will save, our West Virginians 6 cents a gallon in gas prices. Because what we learned during that debate, that many of the gasoline retailers thought that our current unfair trade law, and maybe rightfully so, mandated that they had to mark up the state and federal gas taxes. We clarified that in 259. That's 6 cents a gallon reduction if they don't charge that state and federal tax, and that's important. That's 6 cents lower right there. But again, it is something where we really have to show leadership. Mr. President, I want to say for the record, for the 398,245 potholes in the 16th Senatorial District, I urge passage of the bill.
Senator from Boone.
Mr. President, I also rise in support of the amendment. We have really cut taxes and have felt the impact of the extractive industry severance taxes to the point where right now you can't even get your ditches done. And we have to ration where we do clean our roads first. If you have to get the interstates first, then you get the U.S. routes, then you get the state routes. And these poor people in the more rural areas may not even get their roads snow plowed. A long time ago, West Virginia adopted a bunch of orphan roads. We have so many roads in West Virginia, and they're all state roads. And we have to take care of them. And just the reality of what's happened in the past 5 years or so, just trying to balance the budget has been such a hard effort, and we've cut to the bone, folks. Higher education, for example, is cut 20%. And of course, on top of that, because we're trying to scratch and save everything we can, then the tuition rates go sky high. So, you know, this amendment would allow us to try to get some of these projects like Corridor H and 73, 74 into the possibility range again, put them back into the game. The other thing we talked about is trying to get diversification of the economy and post-mine land use. What we need to access that area are roads and bridges. So this also helps us access those areas that could really be game changers in West Virginia and help us diversify the economy. So, and again, if you look at Senate Bill 12 and SJR that we just passed, you know, working with our counties, and I could really see some major transportation projects happening that would really move us into the black and out of the red. So I urge passage of the amendment.
Further discussion? The senator from Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the amendment. It's not often that we receive emails from back home and folks who say that they're willing to have their taxes raised. But on this issue of roads, I've received numerous emails for folks who want their roads fixed and understand that in order to fix their roads, we have to raise some revenue. So there are folks out there who understand what we're trying to do. And just yesterday, I had an opportunity to visit with one of the economic development planners from my district. And in that conversation, we talked about the things that were impacting their ability to attract businesses to the counties in West Virginia. And the one issue that they raised was the transportation issue. It's impossible to attract new business if we don't have ways to get products to the factories and get the manufactured products delivered to the consumers. And this bill, this amendment, will allow us to continue down the road to develop our new 4 lanes, to develop our 2-lane roads, to be able to deal with these larger vehicles, to deliver the goods that are produced in West Virginia from the new businesses that we recruit here. So I urge the adoption of the amendment.
Further discussion? Senator from Wayne to close.
Yes. Thank you. It's better than that other move that I make, you know, a lot of times. Folks, I think it's quite obvious that we have a crisis here, and I think that the junior senator from the 8th articulated very well how it impacts jobs. He also articulated well that, you know, everyone from the east of the Mississippi is taking care of it except for us. So it's time for West Virginia to do the same. We must step up to the plate. As the senator from Taylor said, our citizens are demanding and deserve it. We can't wait till our nation is #1 in the worst bridges. We need to vote for this amendment, and we must pass the bill tomorrow and send a message to West Virginians that we have heard their message loud and clear. I urge the adoption of the amendment.
The question is on the adoption of the amendment offered by the senator from Wayne. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill be engrossed and advanced to 3rd reading.